Hi, it's Shelly. We're gonna make a fresh batch of these and glaze them. And I'm going to walk you through just how easy it is. So we're gonna start with 2 cups of flour. Make sure that when you measure your flour, you scoop it in and level it off. If you have a leveler with your measuring cup set, use it. It makes a difference in whether it turns out or not. So make sure to level your flour, dump it in, level it off. Okay, so to that, we're going to add some baking powder. So we need a tablespoon. Again, you can see that I cut this off so that I can use, it has a built-in leveler. And so I get the accurate amount of baking powder. I'm going to use salt as well. And I need a half a teaspoon of salt. So we'll go ahead and put that in, and 1/3 of a cup of sugar. So you're seeing how easy this is, right? So we're just measuring 4 powders together. So the salt, baking powder, flour, and sugar. So we're just gonna stir this. We could use a whisk. We need something that's gonna make it kind of even and we don't get a clump of salt in one area. So just toss it back and forth until it's nice. And then we're going to add the secret ingredient of this recipe, which is lime zest. So I want to point out, and I'll come close to the camera so that you can see this. I want to point out the difference in these limes. So you might think that because this one is really dark, that it's the kind of lime we want. This one is kind of middle. So this is actually underripe. It is not ready to use. When it's dark green and hard, it's not ready to use. This one, you can see it's starting to yellow, which means it's ripening, and it's starting to smooth out. This one is quite smooth and quite yellow, so it is now ready to juice, and we're going to take the zest off it. So the zest, really quickly, needs a special tool. And again, I'm going to show you this close up. So this is a zester. You'll see from the side that you can barely see the little grating pieces. It kind of shaves off the outside of the peel. So that's the zest. So the peel, the outside of any kind of citrus is really made up of the pith, which is P-I-T-H, and it is white and it's rather bitter. And then on the very outside where all the color is, that is where the oils of the citrus are, and those oils have a lot of flavor and they're not bitter. So if you have a tool that digs too deep, then it's going to be bitter. If it just is really, a zester is the tool you need. And I have not found another way to get the zest off manually. So I've tried, a vegetable peeler, I've tried all kinds of things. You need this tool for this recipe to be successful. Okay, so, and that's why every baker, this is like the #1 tool that I always say, if you want to be a better baker, get a zester. Because, so what you can see on the back of this tool, it's like snow. So, and you can see that it is, oops, it's just taking a little tiny bit off of the surface. And so that's the important part. And how you do that is you kind of scratch it back and forth. And it's only sharp one way, so make sure that you're working with it. And you can see I kind of rotate it like this and keep turning so that it gets a little bit off at a time, takes all the zest off, and it's all falling into the flour. So I love the aroma of lime. You can use lemon if you want. You could use orange if you want. Because you're going to get all this flavor. It's not going to make it wet. It's not going to make it acidic. It's simply going to add a tremendous amount of flavor. And so even when you're using, so we'll get all that last little bit, and you can see what it's looking like in here, right there. Oops, it just kind of fell together. All right, so that's the adding the lime zest, which is, like I said, it's a secret ingredient. It adds this huge punch of flavor with no acidity, no bitterness, and no extra liquid. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do from the freezer, we're gonna grab raspberries that are frozen. The reason we want to use frozen raspberries is they're gonna hold their shape a little bit longer and not completely break apart in the recipe. So I need about a cup. You could use fresh if that's what you have. And the reason we put it in with the flour is so that it kind of stays suspended in the flour, in the scone, without getting all mushy, wet, and kind of turning the whole color of it this kind of dull red, kind of a purpley pink color. Instead, what we're gonna get is a scone that has distinctive chunks of raspberry in it. And then here's the other cool part of this recipe. Now that we have the flour, baking powder, salt, sugar, the zest, and the frozen berries, we are going to add whipping cream. And the reason this works is because the fat content of the whipping cream replaces the need to scoop in all this butter, and then the liquid part of it, because remember, whipping cream is about 35% fat, whereas butter is about 85% fat, and the rest of the whipping cream is milk. And so instead of doing cut in cold butter and milk, we use whipping cream, and we just have to stir it. You can see it's coming together and it's getting thick. The baking powder is activating and it is thickening right up. So I'm gonna show you this nice and close. This is what the batter looks like. And now all we need to do is grab a non-stick cookie sheet, and I like to use the extra large scoop and just scrape it against there, get a nice even full scoop, give it a couple little squeezes, and that's all we have to do. So depending on the size of scoop will determine how many you get. And the last thing we do before we put it in the oven, now I have my oven preheated to 425, is we're gonna add, and this is completely optional. As a baker, one of the things that we learn to do is stock some things that we use only once in a while that don't go bad. So castor sugar is not gonna go bad, but it is, it's kind of like a secret ingredient. I'll show you. This is what it looks like. It is a coarse sugar. You can see how big it is. And all we do is we take a little bit and we sprinkle it on top of each one. And all it does, again, it's optional, is it adds some nice crunch to the scone and a little sweetness. And so when we've got that all kind of sprinkled on the top, then we're just gonna throw it in and bake it. So we're gonna toss this in the oven, 425. It's going to bake for 15 minutes, and the scone is gonna spread, and it's going to get nice golden brown on the bottom, golden brown on the top, and then we'll let it cool. All right, and we'll show you the next step. We put this in. Watch the clock. Okay, 15 minutes, I'm gonna take it out. And in the meantime, we're going to pretend that these have cooled, and they're the ones we just made, which is identical. And what we're gonna do now is make a glaze with some more of our secret ingredients. All right, so I don't actually measure. I'm just gonna throw in some icing sugar, and I'm going to put in some more zest. So I'm gonna grab my little zester again, and adding zest everywhere that you can in this recipe is just going to make it more intense. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just, it makes it so much better, I promise you. Okay, so now we don't need the juice of both of these limes, I don't think. These ones are pretty little, so let's see. But we're definitely going to use all of the zest If you only have one lime, then use half of the zest in the scones and use the other part of the zest in the glaze, if you can. All right, so we'll just cut this, and I'm going to show you a tool that makes short work of zesting. So what we do, I'll bring it closer. I'm going to use a citrus press. It goes cut side down, just like this, and then we squeeze it and watch. The juice pours right out. Now that's for two reasons. One, the press works in a different way than a juicer this way does. A juicer that goes this way works great for lemons and oranges. It doesn't work as well for the cellular structure of a lime. And so that's one of the reasons that this works so effectively. The other reason is that the lime is ripe. And so because it's ripe, it's just easier, you're gonna get more juice out of it. So all I'm gonna do now is give this a quick little stir. I need the whole one, so let me put the other half in. The juice just pours out. It's such an effective tool. Okay, so now, it smells so good. Because we have that tart from the lime, we have all the aroma from the lime zest, and we have this slurry. So take a look at what I have. So I just need a paste, and I can put this on however I want. So one of the ways to do it is to put it in a tool, like a drizzling tool. Another way to do it is just to scatter messily, if you will, okay? It could, if I want to, I could put a little bit more juice in there probably, just so it's not quite so messy. And the other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a mat underneath here. This is my pastry mat, and I don't really need this tool, but it just allows me to collect the kind of overflow of the glaze. I'll use the underside without the markings. And really what we're gonna do is bite the bullet. We're gonna put a little bit more in there so it's easier to kind of drizzle. And so I'm gonna add, because these are little, usually I get enough from one. Just make it a little bit runnier. So when it's too runny, it kind of runs off the scone. When it is too thick, it kind of doesn't drizzle nicely. So there we have, I think this is gonna be a better consistency. You can see it kind of pours fairly easily. And then what you do is you kind of go over. You can see it's a bit messy. We're wasting a bunch, but if you do over a few of them at a time, you get this really pretty look. If you do it too close, it looks almost too perfect, if that makes sense. There we go. And so then what I can do is reuse some of the glaze to scrape it off my mat. That's why I put the mat under there. There we go. Now let me show you what this looks like. I might drip on the counter, but that's okay. Okay, there we have it. All done. I'll put it on a plate so you can see up close what it looks like. There you have it. So our raspberry lime scone, I do have to try it. It's so good. What you know, I love the lime in it. I'm really sorry. But here's the thing. There's all of the flavor of the raspberry. There's the kind of some brightness from the citrus in the scone. It's nice and moist, it's tender. The glaze is where the punch is, and that is from the juice and the zest. But you know what's kind of fun is the little crunch. You get a little bit of crunch from that caster sugar. So if you find some and have some, use it. Using sugar, just regular sugar, it doesn't tend to stay hard on the surface, so you don't get the same crunch, although you do get a little pretty glaze, and it's kind of sweet and it's pretty, and that's fine too. So that's completely optional. The other question you might have is, could you substitute for the fruit? And absolutely you can. So you could certainly do blueberries, you could do cranberries, and if you have frozen, it's just easier when you're baking so that it stays nice and clean looking, and you see, like I said, those chunks, and instead of coloring the whole thing when it kind of mushes in there. All right, well, I hope that was really helpful. In the description, I'll give you the list of the tools that I think are necessary, including the zester, the citrus press, the scoops, and the cookie sheet. So I have found that the cookie sheet really helps keep it perfectly even, perfectly brown. It's beautifully non-stick. It's a phenomenal cookie sheet. And of course, these other tools, you might have some already in your cupboard, and so haul them out, use them. If you don't, get them so that you can make these. Thanks for watching and hanging out with me. Please, if you like this, subscribe, and we'll stay in touch.